Hello, guys, and welcome to another edition of MigsMusts. Thank you guys for joining us here on youtube.com/MigsBustos, and isa na naman pong episode ito ng MigsMusts, and meron po tayong ka-collab today. Our message, our topic for today is Must Believe, highly inspired from the Emmy Award-winning series TED Lasso, of course, with Jason Sudeikis and more stars that we've watched for the first time. Actually, itong Ted Lasso, it was actually a parody. Originated ito in 2013, 2014. Kumbaga, promo siya for the Premier League na i-air sa States. And what do you know? 2020, 2021, naging ganap siya na series. If you haven't watched it yet, please do get it from Apple TV or where you can get it. Maganda and very inspirational. And talking about this topic, Must Believe, of course, I cannot talk about this topic by myself. I have to get a resource person, an expert when it comes to teams, coaching teams, organizations, and building inspiration. So we have back on the show, we have back on the channel, winning coach of the 2021 Philippine Cup for the TNT Tropang Giga, walang iba, Coach Chot Reyes. Coach Chot, thank you for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me, Migs. Glad to be here.
Coach Chot, Must Believe, what is your first thoughts on this message?
Well, it's the starting point of anything that you want to achieve. You must first believe that it can be achieved, right? It can be something really difficult, something really far-fetched, perhaps a lofty goal, but you must believe that you have a chance of achieving it. Otherwise, I find it's going to be very hard to even start on it if you don't have at least a little bit of belief that it can be done.
Any example from your life, coach, na merong tough task ahead, tall order, and must believe you can achieve this goal?
Well, the most obvious example, I guess, is Gilas Pilipinas. When they offered me the job, the objective was to be the first team in over 4 decades, the first Philippine team to qualify for the World Championships. It was a very, very difficult task. It was something nobody had done before. Tim Cone tried, Norman Black tried, Raiko Toroman, some really excellent, great coaches tried previously, and it still wasn't done because you know how difficult it is to put a program together here in the Philippines, and the national team was not one of our priorities of the basketball community. So for me to accept the job, I had to be able to really sit down and think about if it was achievable. And in the end, because I took it, I found a way. I thought there was a chance, and I said, this goal, this objective is very difficult, but we will find a way. So I had that belief that we are going to find a way, and then we went out and put the team together to get the job done.
Part of Puso's messaging, Gilas Pilipinas Puso's messaging is the heavy faith on belief and beliefs. Coach, when we talk about, spoilers ahead, guys. Sana mapanood nyo. Sana yung mga nanonood dito, napanood na yung Ted Lasso. Laking part na sa akin, Coach, to be honest. Sabi ko, being in the sports world, also coaching and in the industry, parang ang dami mga true-to-life na mga instances. Ted Lasso is a foreign coach, doesn't know anything about football. Of course, that's part of the story. But then, what struck you the most sa character ni Ted Lasso?
The humanness. He was not this this mythical super coach na magaling na alam lahat yung gagawin. It was his humanness, that he had his imperfections, he had his flaws, and still he found a way to get the job done, largely because of his authenticity. He stuck to his values, to who he was as a person, and he did not coach any other way. He did not coach according to what the normal or the usual modes of coaching were, or what was expected, but he coached according to who he was as an individual, according to his values, according to who he was as a person. And then in the end, I think the most important thing, yes, belief is a very big message, But for me, the Ted Lasso story is really a story of relationships. So that was his ability to forge those strong relationships, not only with his players but everyone in the story, in the show. If you take a look, his relationships with his owner, with his coaching staff, with his therapist, with his neighbors, everyone. I think in the end, that's the story of Ted Lasso.
Ganun ba talaga, Coach? I mean, of course, the story is fictional and the banters are fictional. But then, when you relate it to true to life, ganun ba talaga, Coach? I mean, does that happen? How Ted Lasso is?
Yeah, and that was it was a glimpse. It was a very real glimpse of a coach's life, and that's not even scratching the surface. There's a lot more to coaching than what you see on Ted Lasso. But I think of all the shows that we've seen, they're the ones that portrayed really what a coach's life is, because sila yung talagang nagsiseries so mahaba, so they're able to put together and include a lot of the bits and pieces and the ingredients of a coach's, the realities of a coach's life, the difficulty of dealing with your owner, the difficulty of the value of having your people around you, your team, your diamond dogs. I've tweeted that several times already. Every leader needs its diamond dogs. Ganun talaga. Coaching, I've always said this, the X's and O's are a very small part of coaching.
Can you expand more, Coach, on relationships?
I think
building relationships.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for a coach is to build a team, a winning team, a highly effective team around him. Because when you have the right people, when you have the right team around you, then you can figure out and you can navigate through the different twists and turns, whether it's in sports that the season will bring, or in the corporate world. Especially today, your plans are really very challenged today. I don't think anyone has any plans that really goes according to plan now. Everything, because the reality of our world is unpredictability, it's uncertainty. So the key, and I always remind companies that ask me to help them in their strat planning, for example, their strategy sessions, and I always tell them the number one strategy is you. The number one strategy is you, the executives, the team. You are the number one strategy of this team. You have to be. It's you who are going to figure it out, because I don't care how good and talented and experienced you are. You're not going to be able to anticipate. You don't even know what's going to happen in the next year. How can you even make a 3-year plan? You can't even anticipate what's going to happen in the next year. You won't even know what's going to happen in the next 6 months. All the developments that are happening, it's so fast that it's so hard to plan. So the best you can do is just is to have the right people around you. They have an open mind. They are prepared, and that's why I love the concept of future fit more than future proof. Who are fit, who are prepared for the future, and they're very versatile. They're agile, and they're willing to pivot and change direction and adjust, because, like I said, that's the most important thing. And the way to build that is to have those relationships. So if you want to have a great team, my advice always to the team leaders or the executives or the coaches, job number one is to forge strong, trust-based relationships with your people. That is the foundation of all great teamwork. Without that, forget it. It doesn't matter if you have the best size, the best talent, the best technical skills, technology, resources at your disposal. You're not going to become the best team. So that's the start, the ability to build relationships, and then to nurture those relationships through the ups and downs of a season or of a year in a company or whatever, because you will all go through those challenges, difficulties, setbacks, and failures, and that's the real test of the relationships. I mean, it's nice we all have good relationships if we're winning, right? Napakadali nun, but you take a look at when you go through adversity. That's where those relationships are really going to get challenged. So for me, that's what coaching is all about, your ability to build those relationships. Because when you do that, then you model the value of your players also building those same trust-based relationships among themselves. And when that happens, then you have the markings and the beginnings of a good team.
One of the main premises of the show is, of course, what seems to be impossible. Coach na walang alam sa football, an American football coach na papapasukin mo sa soccer or football, doesn't know what he's doing, and one of the main of that is like, paano mananalo to, ba't pa siya nandyan? But maybe I will relate that to like impossible things in life that may seem to, be out of reach, and nakapaskil yun sa locker room na believe. Just believe, and he taps that. What is your...
sorry for interrupting. I think it's a perfect analogy. I think it's a perfect analogy for coaching in the corporate world. What we do as executive coaches, I don't have to be an expert in... I coach the CFO of Kantar, for example. And I'm not an expert in finance. In fact, she teaches me more than I know in finance and all of these things, right? But that's the analogy of Ted Lasso. He didn't know anything about soccer, but he came in, but he knew coaching. He knew relationships, he knew team building. And when you do that, then you can come in and coach. So the same thing in the corporate world. In our practice, you don't necessarily have to be an expert in computer science or finance, or you don't necessarily have to be of course it helps. Having some knowledge in that area helps. A lot of times being a subject matter expert in that area is actually an obstacle, because you have all of these already hard and fast beliefs that are oftentimes get in the way, right? So kay Ted Lasso, ganun eh. I think the fact na wala siyang alam sa English Premier Football, I think that made his job, that made him a better coach, because he was freer to experiment, he was freer to do things. If he were a traditional coach, Nate would never have his opportunity. Diba?
Right. Yeah.
Correct. So so that's what I mean. Sometimes being a subject matter expert gets in the way. So I think it's a perfect analogy for what actually happens in corporate settings.
One of the prominent characters early on is Jamie Tarts, the hard-nosed, talented, know-it-all, selfish player, and sometimes it's impossible to deal with those types of players. How do you navigate through such waters?
First of all, the question I always ask when I'm asked that question in my workshops, the first question I always ask, why is that person still there, right? If that person, obviously that person is talented. Kasi kung ban-ban na, attitude problem pa, ba't pa nandyan, di ba? So obviously talented siya, kailangan mo siya sa team mo. So now it's up to you as a coach to figure out, how can I leverage this talent for the benefit of my team? Several ways I approach it. So first of all is I'll make sure that I build a relationship with this person, so that I'll know what drives him or her, what's important to this person. And then I can speak to that in trying to inspire and motivate that person to be part of the team, to buy into what we want to do as a team, to show that person that giving up his or her personal interests, that stepping aside and sacrificing that for the good of the team will reap benefits. And when those benefits, when the benefits come in, those benefits are going to redound back to the individual as well. So sometimes the real superstars, they don't see that, right? The real talented players, so the Jamie Tarts of the world, for them it's all about them. It's all about me, of course. So that's what the first thing I'll do is I'll make sure I establish a relationship with that person, which as you saw, Ted Lasso really did, right? Except before he knew it, na trinade pala against his knowledge. But that's exactly what he did. He just created and established a relationship with Jamie Tart. So that's what I'm going to do, number one. Number two, you have to understand also that when you coach a player like that, you're not only the coach of the player. You have to remember you're coach of the team. So when your work with that player, the time that you spend with that player now gets in conflict, becomes detrimental to the entire team structure, or the things you're trying to do as a team, then it's time to let go, to do something else, to trade. Kasi for me, that's always the 3 T's. Train, trade, terminate. So you train a person, maybe it's a skill issue, maybe it's an attitude problem, but so you train that person, you work with that person, you coach the person. If you've done all you could and it's not working, then you look to trade him. In sports, trading is easy, right? In the corporate world, trade may be a different department, maybe under a different industry, different area, a different territory. If that still doesn't work, then the final option is always open to you. That is terminate, right? So it is your job as a coach or a leader to make the tough call, to make the tough decision. When is it time to go to the final option? And I understand in corporate settings that's not always as easy, it's not always convenient, but there are always ways to deal with a person like that. If that person is really being a problem, is really difficult, there's a lot of ways short of letting that person go, or asking him to resign, or terminating that person. Sometimes it's not possible in the corporate world, but there are different ways of doing it. There are other creative ways of doing that, putting that person on a floating status, putting that person in limbo, not making that person part of the important things you're doing. There's a lot of things that you can do. So that's how I deal with Jamie Tarn in sports, go in the corporate world.
Yes. Coach Chot, para naman po sa general public, sa mga madla, or the ones who are watching this, and if we have the sports reference, sports mirrors life. The ones who are in a losing streak, the ones who are in a transition period, the ones who don't know what lies ahead. And minsan yun na lang yung magsistick, yung belief, yung attitude of believing. Ano yung masasabi mo, Coach, sa mga ganitong sitwasyon?
Rely on your team. Don't take it all on yourself. Don't take it all by yourself. Don't take it all alone. Rely on your team. Be human. Be very honest with your emotions. You're getting frustrated. You're getting disappointed. You're getting worried. You have to be able to go through that. And in our workshops, we call that leadership, emotional agility. So for me, that's the first thing. You have to be very aware. What are you doing individually? Are there still things, perhaps the problem, and I see this a lot in organizations, a lot of times the problem is the leader. To be very honest, perhaps the problem is you. So you have to understand that, and that's where emotional intelligence comes in, because the first component of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. So for you to be aware, maybe I'm the problem. So seek help. There's several ways you can do that. Or step aside, or whatever. But the key is that awareness. So perhaps I'm the problem. Next, ask the help of your team. Rally your team around you to come up with solutions, with different out of the box thinking, some creative ways to address whatever it is that is keeping you stuck. If you are in a losing streak, or if you have several quarters where you have been losing money as a business. Next, take a look. So when you engage your entire team with that, then you are leveraging on everyone's expertise. And hopefully, when you do that, then you will find different ways. Then you have to have the courage, and I think that's where belief comes in. You have to have the belief in your people, and then you have to have the belief in their abilities and the belief to execute on what they are suggesting. Take a look. Do you have the resources? What are the risks? But finally, you have to face the fact that sometimes the best recourse is to cut costs, to break and move. I think one of the important things of going into business is also learning when to get out of business. I think that's just as important. Right?
Parang cut loss yan sa pagsa-stocks.
Yeah, di ba? Kasi minsan that's the, what do they call it? The fallacy of the sunk cost. Hindi, tatsakain ko na to, dami ko nang ginastos dito eh. Dami mo na palang ginastos dyan. Anong gusto mo? Dadagdagan mo pa yung gastos mo, di ba? So, again, and that's a very fine line. Sasabihin mo, kala ko ba, coach, resilience, never give up, never, yeah, but there's
a line.
And there is smart grit and there is dumb grit. You have to know the difference, right? You have to know the difference. So yun lang, those are the difficult questions that you have to ask yourself. But I think the most important thing is an awareness as a leader. You know, when it's time to, maybe this is not for us, maybe this is not the right time, maybe we've made a mistake, learn the lessons, move on. And I know, again, it is a lot easier said than done, pero ganun talaga. So sa amin, if it's in sports, if we're in the midst of a losing streak, okay, there's so many things that we can do. But the very first thing I'll do is I'll take a look at myself. What am I doing wrong? What are we doing wrong as a coaching staff? And then we go to the players. We look at the video. We look at the numbers. We take a look at what are we doing wrong. And then we have to be prepared to do things differently, because the definition of stupidity is continuing to do the same things and hoping for a different result.
Right.
So you have to be prepared to do things differently, even when those things might be against what your belief is, against what you think is the right thing. But you know, in a losing streak, you have to have that courage to try different things. Yeah.
Coach Chot, if I may, last na to, Coach. Pa-follow up ko lang. Sabi niyo nga, Coach, awareness and acceptance. Pero it's easier said than done. I mean, that first step is hard to debunk to begin with. Not a lot of people have that kind of notion na parang, look at myself in the mirror, ako pala may mali.
Yep.
Coach, how do you break that in case?
Very good question. I think you have to understand today, the old individual heroic model of leadership no longer works. So that, you know, the old style, the general, this is what you should do, this is what you should, how we should do it, you know, the Superman theory of leadership no longer works today. Why? Because of the pace of change, because the deluge of information is so vast that no one person, I don't care how talented, skilled, or experienced you are, you cannot cope by yourself. You really need to build teams of leaders around you. You really need to rely on the help of others. What does that entail? It entails humility. So I think that's the most important thing today. You must be humble enough to say, di ko to kaya mag-isa. And I think that's the starting point. That awareness. I always tell leaders, again, going back to TED LASSO, you must have your diamond dogs. In the corporate world, we call it a challenge network. In personal coaching, in life coaching, I advise my clients always, for example, you Migs, I will ask you, do you have your own personal board of directors? Diba? Why is board of directors available only to companies and corporations? Do you have your own personal board of directors? The people you can go to, and they will tell you like it is. They will be straight with you. They have their ears to the ground, and they will tell you, Migs, nagkakalat ka. Migs, mali ka. So that's going to be, that's the only way I know that can drive your awareness. To have the humility to first understand that you do not know it all. You do not have all the answers. And then number two, the humility to have other people around you that you ask and that you will listen to. The problem with leaders, the higher up we go in organizations, leaders surround themselves with yes men. That's the problem. They are
right.
In fact, there is already research. The science shows that the higher up you go in an organization, the less self-aware you are. Because that's the tendency, diba? You're surrounded by yes men. They only want to They will only tell you the things you want to hear. Patay na. That's the red flag. That's why a lot of leaders they get into trouble. So we always try to remind the leaders today, make sure you have a challenge network, make sure you have your diamond dogs around you, make sure you're always practicing self-awareness, and that comes from a place of humility. Hubris and all that has no place in leadership today.
Coach Chot, habol lang ako. One of the examples in TED LASSO, you mentioned Nate. Nate, just for context sa mga manonood natin, Nate is a utility person, kitman, as what they call it. And I want to get your thoughts on Coach MaBelen. She's not a kitman, she's not a utility person, but she is an unprecedented example of a woman coaching in a men's professional league. Having that kind of move, what was it like, Coach?
Again, it just goes back to belief and relationships. Just I saw in her when she was attending my coaching clinics that there was this person who had a hunger in her that of course was driven because she's a female and all of that, all of those considerations. But even on top, beyond that, she had a hunger to whether that's to prove herself or to be the best at what she does. And then I saw that she had the willingness to do the Nate stuff. Do you know that one of the things that she did, just because she wanted to be so close to the game, she volunteered to be one of the marshals or the volunteers in the Southeast Asian Games. Doing that, taga-kuha ng bola, parang utility person. Exactly like me. She volunteered doing last SEA Games. Just
willing to do the dirty work.
Yeah, just to be able to be close to Tim Cone, and that was a highlight of her life. When after one of the Gilas practices, Tim Cone actually approached her and said, "Thank you for all you do." That was the highlight of her life. So yun. So yun ang those are the things that you look at in people, right? I mean, there's a lot of people, they know X's and O's, they have offense, defense, the tactics and all that. But you look for the other things, and you see that not in the resume, you don't see that in the CV, you see that in their behavior, in actions. What do they do? So yun nakita ko. So there was this person, and she really wanted it. And she was willing to do a lot of other things, and then so that's what I said. I've always believed in offering people chances, because my first break in coaching was when I was also given a chance, an unknown, fresh from college, wannabe coach, just given an opportunity. So it's just a matter of paying it forward, right? And offering the same opportunities to other people. So I've always done it all throughout my coaching career, and then you can, the Ryan Betitas of this world, or other coaches that we just gave opportunities to, and MaBelen is just perhaps the latest one such.
Galing. Thank you so much, Coach Chot Reyes, for taking time again in portraying this message of believing. And of course, must believe ang title ng ating episode. That's si Coach Chot Reyes. Coach Chot, if you have any message to our viewers.
Well, first of all, I really like the message that you're trying to relay in this show. The musts, and I think it's great that you are also now going into the realm not only of sports, but including inspirational and motivational stuff as well, because God knows that's what we need today. And my message to the listeners is that now more than ever, we really need good leaders. And you don't need the title of supervisor, manager, boss to be a leader. Every single one of you, every single listener here, no one is exempt from the responsibility of personal leadership. So that means be the best you can, and be a positive influence. In the end, when when more of us strive to become positive influence, then this will be a better place to live.
Thank you, Coach Chot Reyes. Again, believe that you're a leader, believe that you can accept and have the humility to begin with, and everything will just fall into place. Coach Chot Reyes, thank you so much for joining us here. And maraming salamat,
Thank
Coach
you.
Chot, and good luck in your endeavors. Thank you, Coach.
Thanks for having me, Migs. Bye.
Thank you, Coach.